Hi, I'm Jonathan Cohen. I'm a clinical professor of medicine at NYU Langone in New York, and it's my pleasure today to be here with Dean Jensen.
And I'm a professor at UCLA in Los Angeles, here to be interviewed by John.
So it's a great pleasure to talk with you today, Dean, after 25 years after being your fellow, and also your part-time research nurse when she went on maternity leave. But Dean, everyone out there here at DDWs sees you up on the podium yet another time giving a great talk on original research, and I think it'd be great if people could get a sense of how you got to where you are now. Tell us a little of your story.
Well, I came from a small town in Washington State, went to a public university, mostly on scholarships and having to work, and I was originally doing oceanographic research with fish. I was in charge of identifying all the fish in Puget Sound. So I've been doing research since I've been at least 18, in medical school, some basic research on thermal conduction in the skin, and even when I was in the Army, I was doing research on birds. Why the Fort Campbell, Kentucky should have a bird problem that brought some of the helicopters down and gave the soldiers histoplasmosis. So we figured it out, how to solve the problem. And then when I came out of the Army and did GI, I was affiliated with the CURE group, Dr. Mort Grossman and John Eisenberg and John Walsh, and they wanted me to do a lot of clinical work and also laboratory research, which I wasn't so interested in. And having been in the Army during the Vietnam situation, I did not want to be bossed around too much. So eventually, through their guidance, figured out what I wanted to do. And, that's the beginning of the story. It's also of interest that I have a lovely wife who wanted me to go into practice back in the Northwest, but at that time there were no decent practices. And they had offered me a job at UCLA, and so I said, I think that I should take it for a couple of years and we'll see what comes along. And now I've been there, as you would say, forever almost, but I'm still trying to answer simple questions, have figured out how to do it, how to get funding. When I started out, I had maybe 2% protected time, and right now I have, based on my own grants and my free agency, as you would call it, I'm up to about 2/3 time protected, which means I can do mostly what I want, and I have 4 grants, and I run a NIH training grant and run a core center, and so the key is free agency. Realize what you can do and you can't do, and listen to the family.
Well, did you figure this all out independently, or you've been my mentor for 25 years and actually taught me what a mentor is, really. So who are your biggest influences and your mentors in your career?
Mentors are really key all along the line. Even when I was in oceanography, and the reason I didn't pursue it, I got seasick, and the guy who ran the program, Tom English was his name, was a professor, really neat guy, took me aside and he said, you should look at something else. You're a smart guy. I'll give you a recommendation wherever you want. And even when I was applying for medical school, I went back and talked with him, and he gave me a recommendation. It may have been part of the reason that I got into medical school, I don't know. But all along the way, even in the Army, you have to identify people who can help you, you can communicate with, that you're sort of attracted to for one reason or another. I think in research that's critical, and that the mentors I had were basic scientists mostly, but I think you can figure out, if you're smart enough, how to adopt their techniques, their knowledge into a new area, which was the charge that they gave me, and they helped me, not financially, but they help me with their ideas and their encouragement. I think that's so critical. They also reviewed the papers, and you learn how to write, and whether it be papers, grants, you learn how to present. So they critique you in a collegial way without crucifying you. And I think there's a way to do that. I mean, like you, it's very interesting. I've trained a lot of people over the last 35 years. Almost every one of them I'm still in contact with, whether they're in Europe or Asia or wherever. At these meetings, I see them. They come to the UCLA reception. So I think mentorship is more like a friendship, but maybe one person at one point knows a little bit more than the other person, and they try to impart that, kind of like part of a big family, and I think that is critical. It may be missing in some programs now because of the need to earn money or the millennial lifestyle perceptions.
Dean, when we were talking earlier, you were relating some of your badminton days, and I don't think that's something that everyone knows about you. So maybe you could, how does that translate into your prowess as an endoscopist, and has athletics been an important part of I know it's been an important part of your life?
Well, the badminton is just something that happened. I came from a small town. It was raining most of the time in western Washington, Port Angeles, and they had a badminton club there, a guy originally from California who started this with another one, and recruited all these small kids. I was a small kid in high school or in grade school and high school and wasn't qualified to do football, and that we were fast in track, but I didn't like track. So at any rate, we started playing badminton probably when I was about 10 or 11 years old and played all through college, and I played international badminton for a while, even through part of college, but then it got, you just get too busy. But I think that it develops hand-eye coordination. I was always on teams. You have to get along with diverse people. And most of all, you have to listen to the coaches. And of course, when you're a teenager, you think they don't know anything, but they always had somebody that knew more about athletics, what you could do with your body. And I think that athletics that you can take with you the whole time in your journey is important. So I don't play badminton anymore. When I went to Oregon, I took up squash, and I was playing squash with the Canadians and the Pakistanis, who originally used to really beat the crap out of me. But then after a while, after a couple of years, you really learn a lot how to play. And then when I was in the Army, I started playing tennis. So now I play tennis. I still do cycling. I've always done that, road biking, swimming, hiking, and skiing. We even have a Mountain Collective pass, which allows us to go skiing, and it was a great year. I was able to ski 8 different days this year in the West. Unbelievable snow. I think it's good to be able to get away, not just with your family, your friends, out of medicine, decompress, and it allows your body to relax too, which is so critical. You learn what not to press too much, and we all have these issues with our body, and what not to. And I've had a lot of injuries, so I have a podiatrist on my payroll. I have an orthopedic surgeon.
I think that because people are wondering, they see you up on the podium, they wonder, well, Dean, what keeps you going? What keeps you going? So maybe that's part of it. But what really keeps you going there year after year, and when doing what you're doing at the highest level?
I think it's fun. You have to get enjoyment or have some fun and some humor, which is some people have lost. And I think that if you can do that, have some fun with your buddies, your fellows. We have these former trainees who come in and attend for us, Gus Machicano, Gareth Dulé, and others who were fellows many years ago, and they're on all the papers. So you have fun doing some area which you're interested in. I think the more complicated question is, where do the questions come from? And you don't know where they come from. You ask about athletics. Sometimes when I'm walking my daughter's dog and Will Rogers, I think of something from the day that informs me about a question that we should answer, that we can answer. So asking questions like a little kid does, my grandson asked me all these questions. Why is the moon there this morning? Well, how should I know? It just happens to be there. Those are things you can't always answer, but in a specialty, you have to be able to ask questions that you can answer with a reasonable time frame. The other issue is within your practice, the cases that you see, the people that you see bring up questions. Either they ask you questions, or of course the fellows do, and you have to be honest about whether you know the answer or not. And so these are what feeds your mind and keeps you young, as it were. But I don't think everybody has that. I don't know. Some people are not curious. They don't have any questions. It's part of the reason probably half the gastroenterologists don't come to meetings like this. They think they have enough knowledge, and what it's called is a cohort effect. What they're taught in fellowship is what they carry forward and they do, especially in endoscopy, the rest of their life. But I'm not like that. I was in other areas. I was a mathematics major for a while in theoretical math, but I didn't like the theoretical part of it. So I went back into zoology. And as at the University of Washington, they have a famous group there that was interested in angiography and technology. And, it's where Cy Rubin, who was one of my early mentors, was. He was my attending when I was a third-year medical student, got me interested in GI, and was a real nice old man, especially to the medical students, asking them questions and telling them, here's what we know, here's what we don't know. So questions just come up, I think, that you are curious about and you can answer. And you think, some of them we think are important. The other ability is to be able to get money from somebody to do a proper study. And I know how to do that now because I've been in several institutions. I get money from the NIH, from the VA merit review, and from foundations, and not so often from industry now. So it's a skill set that you learn. The curiosity is another matter. I think some people are born curious and they don't lose it.
Well, looking to the future, what do you think we need to be doing to help nurture that curiosity? What can we be doing? Any messages to our audience today, and so they can follow in your footsteps a little bit?
Well, I think we need to recruit people into GI from the beginning who are, at least some of them would be interested in research. And I think research is a broad spectrum, from basic research, subcellular, all the way up to outcomes and health services research. In most programs, that's not done. So recruitment of residents into a program where research is possible and research training is possible, realizing that probably 8 out of 10 are not going to be interested in research. They're interested in practice for various reasons: millennial reasons, lifestyle, family reasons, or they're not curious. But there are a group of people that would be interested in research and learning more, and those are the people that I think should be recruited, at least in part. We don't do that now enough. And they should be funded. I happen to run an NIH training grant, so if they were to get a master's degree through one of the great graduate schools at UCLA, they would qualify. Their way would be paid, tuition and the rest of it, for a couple of years while they got a master's degree and did focused research. So I think the other part of that is you have to have mentors who are willing to take them on and help them, which gets to your other question. What happens after that, I mentioned earlier, when they go on to a job, if they go to an academic medical center, they in their recruitment ought to insist on getting some protected time from the beginning and have a contract to that effect. It'll take them a while to get funding of their own, but in the meanwhile, they can continue what they've done with the mentor, get new mentors, and carry on.
And there's some hope for those in practice as well, if they're curious to continue doing. We've worked together a little bit through the years too.
Well, I think collaboration is great, and that's, you ask about all the old fellows. It's interesting now, this study that I have, randomized study to prevent delayed post-polypectomy bleeding, the recruitment was low. So I've recruited 2 former fellows of mine who, one is at Kaiser in Los Angeles. That's Gareth Dulay and his group. And the other guy is Jim Smith from Ochsner Clinic. So these are guys I go to who have their own practices, their own structure, healthcare, but they're able to do the research in a collaborative fashion. If we finish the research, they'll get their names on all the articles. But it's fun. It's fun to have them involved. And I tap, as I've tapped you and others, I tap them to help us.
Well, I want you to keep on doing it for quite some time, and I really appreciate your taking the time to share this with the GI audience at large.
Yeah, my pleasure, as usual.